Welcome back on the AM show. We get into our big stories, but right before we tell you about our guests, how about my own guest in the studio?
You need to change, it's a new year, Benjamin. Hello to you.
My own special guest in the studio. I've been down called one of the days and he was...
Oh, I've been down called every day you were away, asking where you were.
And he called on, was it Friday? And, where is Bernice? And if Bernice had been here and all of that, and I assured him that on Monday you'd be here. So, ladies and gentlemen, Bernice Abubeidu Lanza. This year she's not Akakpo Benjamin, and I am not Bernice Abubeidu Lanza.
Oh, it's good
to have you back.
Good to be back, Benjamin.
Looks like the few days off did
some magic, eh?
Did you some good.
Definitely, like it did for you.
Like it did for me. It's an article, network article. But anyway, we have a conversation this morning. We're talking about governance issues. We're talking about the second term of President Akufo-Addo. This is the third year. What have been the highs? What have been the lows? And what would our guests want to see in the year 2023? Well, joining us for that discussion, we have Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. He's a political scientist at the University of Ghana. He is also the Director Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. We also have joining the conversation Dr. Michael Ayamga, Development Economist, Director, West Africa Center for Sustainable Rural Transportation, University for Development Studies. Also on board, Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opuni-Frimpong. He's the Executive Director, Alliance for Christian Advocacy Africa. He's a former General Secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. All of them join the conversation this morning. Doc and team, a very good morning to all of you.
Good morning, Ben, and good morning to your team, Bernice and the others.
Right, I was just about to mention that I'm here with Bernice Abubeidu Lanza. Bernice?
Yes, sir. Good morning to you, and I hope the years are already treating you kindly, and you're looking forward to a great start. Let's start off this way. Let me start with you, Dr. Asah-Asante. I remember when we spoke just before the year ended, I decided to find out from you what you were looking forward to. But let's zero it in. Too bad. I'm told that we've lost Dr. Asah-Asante. Okay, let me come to you, Dr. Ayamga. What will be your highlights so far of President Akufo-Addo's tenure? What are the things that stand out for you?
Thank you. Good morning. The things that stand out for me particularly is the decision by this government to directly link whatever revenue and resources we had to first human capital development, which is in the free SHS. Secondly, agricultural improvement and industrialization, which you can find in the planting for food and jobs, and also 1D, 1F, 1V, 1 dam. If you look at also the resolve to deal with environmental challenges that are a key threat to our development agenda, I think that the mere intention to prioritize these three areas are very high points for me as far as this government is concerned. Yes, there may be some challenges in terms of how this is done, but to particularly seek to boost smallholder inclusion in the agricultural value chain was one high point for me from the perspective of the fact that we are dealing with an agricultural system that is dominated by smallholders, and over the years, our quest to improve agriculture or to modernize agriculture has been more or less focused on medium and large-scale farmers. So to have interventions that more or less open the door or indicated the intention of upgrading, improving, and linking the very core of our agricultural system, which is the smallholders, to the production value chains, to me was an ideal and the most effective way to improve agriculture in Ghana and also the livelihoods of people. If you take, for example, the free SHS, yes, it has a lot of challenges. We're not going to run away from that. But there is no household in Ghana that you would enter and somebody didn't directly benefit from not having to pay secondary school fees. So largely, in terms of it cutting costs, yes, it has done that. It is a form of direct transfer to the low-income earners of the country. So if you look at all these things, yes, you find something positive in the intention, in the idea. Yes, the implementation didn't go as planned, but you cannot run away from the fact that if you wanted to transform Ghana, or for that matter, any emerging economy, these are the things to do to ensure that those at the periphery are brought mainstream so that they can contribute to economic growth and also benefit from the proceeds of economic growth. So largely, I thought these are the high points that I can say you can associate with President Akufo-Addo. I must add that a government that is dealing with economic crisis is very difficult to point out the positives. Because anytime you see something good is happening, somebody is talking about the bread and butter issues, their inability to put food on the table. But imagine, look at the stability in the country. I live in Tamale here, and the president's instrumentality in bringing and sustaining peace in Dagon is something we cannot push under the shelf. Much as I don't want to say it because I'm feeling the economic pain more than and I'm tended to forget the peace that I'm enjoying. But yes, let's give credit where it's due. And I think that the president has largely done well in terms of what he has done for peace in this country and Dagon in particular. And the key agenda in terms of agriculture, human capital development, and also you look at social protection and inclusion. Yes, the intentions are there. There are a whole lot of problems. But if we want to develop this country, will you say that no, what is going on, what has been put on paper is bad? No. From a technocratic point, I would say, yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to you. There are a few follow-ups on your submission there, but let me come to Reverend Dr. Opuni Frimpong. Good morning to you, Doc, and Happy New Year. Let me find out from you also what your highlights are for President Akufo-Addo's second term so far.
Good years for all of us the coming years. I also am excited about free SHS. I consider that to be a game changer. And for us to be able to sustain it up to this point, despite the challenges, there's green, gold challenges, the numbers, you go to the schools, kitchen size, and the numbers they are serving. Some schools, 3,000 students. The same kitchen that serves 700 students, now the kitchen is serving 3,000. But so free SHS is a game changer. Something that I even want to transcend President Akufo-Addo's administration. And that is why sometimes when we hear calls for review, I feel we will be humble enough to listen to such opinions so that free SHS can be handled beyond politics, that it can serve the needy in our country and respond to the inequalities in the system. But energy is also something that I'm excited about. We still have electricity, and small businesses are still able to run. And for us to have energy, electricity throughout, and sometimes we have little challenges here and there, but on the whole, as a nation and where I live, electricity has been a bit stable. I'm excited about it. I look at some European countries, America, and this winter and what people are going through. And when I wake up in the morning and I have electricity for whatever I must do, I'm excited. And even energy, I'm not comfortable about how much I buy diesel and petrol. But I also know some countries queue for fuel. And you look at the line, and for us to have gain still energy fuel, I'm excited. I'm not comfortable, as I said, about how much we buy it, and I pray and hope we will come down. One area that I feel our expectation as a people was raised very high, and I'm still looking up. Even though we keep hearing it, but we don't see much, is this idea of Ghana beyond aid. Now, I keep hearing that in the statement, the presentations of the president. But if we talk about Ghana Beyond Aid and we look at how much we are importing rice, sugar, almost everything, I'm excited about Ghana Beyond Aid as a political or governance position, but sometimes I wish we can see more what it takes to build a Ghana Beyond Aid.
Interesting. I'm told we have Dr. Asah Asante. Thank you for reconnecting, Doc. So the two other panelists just shared with us what their highlights are of President Akufo-Addo's tenure so far. I'd like to find out from you quickly what yours are.
I want to look at these things from three perspectives: political, economic, and social. Let me start with the issue of political. If you look at the political landscape, you realize that there are pluses, there are minuses. In terms of politics, I want to touch on the issue of good governance, which is an important aspect of our political life. Issue of, public sector reforms, issue of rule of law being upheld, issue of accountability to a large extent has been held in high esteem. We have also seen the issue of sometimes participation and whatnot. Let's look at even within the political sector. I want to look at the issue of democracy. All effort has been done to strengthen the frontiers of this country's democracy. There's no doubt about that. Akufo-Addo has done a human job in that area. We still have democracy irrespective of the threats within the sub-region, with some of them impinge on our national security and all that. And of course, he's been able to resource the security people to some extent, and they are carrying out a good job and all that. We can also look at issue of human rights violations and all that. We have had a number of them. So far, so very good. But if you look at the negatives with regard to this section I'm talking about, we talk about issue of corruption. We are still, struggling to deal with the canker of corruption. Evidence are available, Transparency International, Ghana Integrity Initiative, and all that. They talk about the fact that every year we lose about GII, about $3 billion to issue of corruption. This is a whole lot of money that can help us to deal with the economic challenges we have in our country. Even though I admit that government had put in some measures and all that, but sometimes government push and action is also counterproductive to the fight against corruption. I must be blunt on that. And so issue of corruption, I would say that we are only paying lip service. It's still what festering. We'll talk about issue of managing of waste within the system. Auditor General report is abundantly clear on that, where we have seen a whole lot of, money slip through our fingers through waste. All right. We have seen a lot of that. I also admit that Parliament and has also done a good job by helping us to also recover some of these things, these monies, but we still have a large chunk of them in waste. We can also talk about issue of, let's move to the issue of the economy. Yes, the difficult times we find ourselves is here with us, but still government is soldiering on. It's not been easy. Government has done it bit, but what we are experiencing now tells us that there is a lot of problems that we have. And I will attribute the problems to two things: issue of indiscipline and the issue of public policy failure. All right. If you look at indiscipline, we've seen indiscipline in the area of how government manage state resources. If you look at issue of corruption, which I've said already, if we manage them well, if we are that disciplined, we'll be able to deal a big blow to it. But here you are, it's still with us. If you look at even government size, as part of the indiscipline, all right, too much size of government that, affects our economic and political fortunes. Look at the issue of public policy failure. Let's look at the issue of the inflation. If you look at the whole of Africa, I can say without fear of contradiction that apart from a few countries, we are inflation is extremely high. And maybe we gone past Zimbabwe and a few of them. But the rest, we are not performing well at all. We have very high inflation. Put even the Francophone African countries aside, the Anglophone, we are a worse state in terms of inflationary figures. It tells you that we are not tracking the inflation well, or there's something that we are not doing basically wrong. We are not doing basically right. Because if we are getting our acts together, I'm not sure we'll be able to get to this level. And in public policy, the last bit of public policy is a policy evaluation. Do we evaluate our policies? If we did, then how come we are where we are now? It means something is wrong here. In terms of debt management, we have seen that we have gone past the threshold, and we are very close. Almost, we are in a debt distressed country. We are, and it tells you that we are not managing our debt portfolio very well. Look at things that we import in this country. I admit that we cannot produce all the things that we depend on here. Some we need to import, but there are some. If you look at our budget and all that, it tells you that we have capacity for producing some of the things that we depend on here, and yet we have, taking we have jumped into importing things that affect our monetary policies. It tells us that there too we are not doing evaluation very well, and that we are where we are because of our failure. Look at what monetary policies. All right. Recently, we saw the action of the Bank of Ghana, and it started bringing a sigh of relief to us. Then I asked myself, where has the Bank of Ghana been at the birth of this second tenure? Because things have gone through the roof, and one would have expected the Bank of Ghana to live up to expectation. We didn't see that, but at least the approach now tells us that there is more room for improvement, and that they want to turn things around for us. Issue of any policy you can think of, it tells you that we are either just introducing the policy without evaluating them, and these have gone a long way to undermine our economic fortunes. And if you put all together, that is the pluses and the minuses, you realize that for the economy, we are virtually in a very difficult situation. Come to look at the issue of the social programs and policies and all that. Free SHS, I commend the government. It's a very bold initiative. Government has done a lot in spite of the difficulties around. We are still having the program on, but my worry is also that sometimes, if you look at all these things I've said, issue of good governance, which requires that stakeholder participation, is critical when you are looking at policy programs. More often than not, you realize that some of the policies, government are not giving heed to what people prefer in terms of ideas and issues, things that will support in the drive to make this one, such policies, a reality. I'll give you an example. If you look at the issue of the way we are struggling with the e-levy and all that, all the experts said that, look, you can purge it between 0.5% to 1.0. Government said no. We talk and talk and talk. The government was saying that, yes, wait for results and all that. Where are the results? Today we have come back to square one. It's a waste of everybody's time. We believe that when stakeholders are talking, you listen with rapt attention, and whatever is important, you pick, and then you incorporate into the policy to make everybody happy. If you look at the issue of even the size of government here, people have said time and again that the size is too big for a country which is a poor one, for that matter, and we don't need that because it goes with what cost. The president was saying that, yes, just wait for results, and where are the results? Today, yes, that's a problem, because we believe that governance is a dialogue and it's a continuum that you give, I take. I prefer I suggest, and then you incorporate if it is important and all that. This thing is missing in the governance, cycles
Right.
within the system. There are a whole lot of things, but I believe that there is hope. I believe that there is hope that if government will now want to do things right, then I believe that they need to take this thing one by one, examine them critically, and then put them into proper perspective so that they can bear the fruit that we want. Otherwise, then the government will continue to be in difficulty. I always ask myself, why is that we have a lot of human resource in this country, and yet government is struggling for ideas and all that? Is it the case that we don't want to build this society, or is it the case that government want to do something that is extraordinary? I share that to think that we have a lot to do, that the government must put its acts together. And if we get everybody to the table, I believe strongly, these problems that we have will be a thing of the past.
Right. Let me bring in Dr. Ayamga. You're a development economist. I'd like to find out from you, when it comes to our developmental strategy as a country, and how in this second term of the Akufo-Addo administration, in its third year, how do you feel we fared in that regard? Development-oriented governance. What do you think? What can you say in that respect?
Yes, I've already outlined these things, that if you want to transform an emerging economy, you target inclusion, you target broadening the number of contributors to economic activity in the country. So largely looking at agriculture, which employs almost 70% of our population, and also seeking to have a continuous human capital development right from basic education through to secondary school, was an appropriate strategy to pursue. One of the challenges has to do with the inability of this government to meet its targets in terms of stabilizing the economy. The president ran on the back of bringing stability in the foreign exchange market, which it has largely failed, first due to our own failure to build a robust economy. We built a sandcastle of an economy, and the winds and the rains washed it off. So you cannot achieve any other agenda if you fail on the economic scorecard. So that has been the problem of government. And also the issue of unemployment. This government also wanted to solve unemployment. It came with the Nation Builders Call, which I thought that was a good initiative to focus on the youth. The only problem with that, the unpacking of this policy into some plans, programs, and activities was challenging, and they more or less sought to expand it, make it big, bring in procurement, and that is the problem in this country, that we tend to upscale things too early. They become very big operations, and we cannot track expenditures, can't track delivery, and then they become failures. That has been the challenge of the Nation Builders Club, NAPCO. I would have wished that someone who wanted to promote industrialization would try to ensure that the backward and forward linkages are first in place before you build the factory. But you look at our factories now, they look like helicopter drops. You are there, and the next morning, there's a factory that is totally unrelated to the economic activity going on in the area. And you don't find any attempt to do these linkages. I'll give an example. I was traveling to Bolgatanga, and then I just stopped somewhere by this watermelon factory there. And right by the roadside, you had women selling watermelon on the road, and the factory was behind them shut. That is the problem. That's soft, those soft processes to put in place to ensure that there's a linkage between the infrastructure and the people. It's not there. So that has been the challenge with government. If you look at, for example, the free SHS, we have implemented this thing, and our core criteria has been numbers, improved enrollment. That is all retracked. And we have issues of double track system. We have issues of people spending the least amount of time in school. These have not become our core issues. We just look at the number of people who have enrolled into the program, and we think we are making successes. I remember before President Akufo-Addo got elected, he made one important statement that I was so excited about. He said it was a campaign platform that former President Kufuor had introduced the model school system, and he was going to add free SHS to it. I said, yes, this was the best way to go. That imagine that we have 10 model schools in each region, and in these model schools, it was free SHS. That would have been something that will continue producing students and graduates who are benefiting from frontline education, cutting-edge education that is consistent with the challenges we are facing.
Right.
Because one of the challenges you need to understand, we all tend to drum this issue of brilliant students. So we think that anybody at all who is able to move from primary 1 to primary 2 or from primary school to JSS is a brilliant student, and that is not the case. I would have wished that we have some selection criteria that also required people to prove that they are brilliant. So the parents invested in making their students brilliant in order for them to benefit from free SHS. This attempt to implement it whole scale has brought a lot of challenges. And whilst we are achieving numbers in enrollment, we are increasingly seeing a significant deterioration in the quality.
Doc, tell me briefly, in terms of free SHS, are you for a revisiting of the policy in terms of some tweaking? We all accept it's a good policy, but in terms of maybe bringing on board parents who can afford to pay, streamlining it like the Kenyans did in 2008, where for day students, about 23% was paid. And for boarders, the government only subsidized by just a bit. What is your thinking on that, quickly on that?
Yes, and for a review, definitely, because as it is now, we are not adequately preparing our children and our wards for the challenges that will confront them in their time. If we are talking about globalization, then think about it 20 years from now. It may be difficult for our wards to compete anywhere, to get enrollment into schools and other things, just because we have failed to get it right at the secondary school level. So yes, I am for review. The burden on government to continue to deliver quality and also quantity must be balanced so that the parents are brought in to pay for some aspects of this education, and government focuses on quality.
Okay.
I've said time without number that what we are doing is more or less like an apartheid system where you attend the best school for free and the worst schools also for free. I don't think that that is a balanced education. We ought to ensure that we are working to bring uniformity in our education system so that it doesn't matter where somebody schools, if the fellow is certain that is getting the best of education and who achieve some level of human capital development that will enable them work wherever they want. So I'm going to say that, yes, we ought to review it, and we have to look in ways to make sure that government's resources are going towards quality improvement and also targeting where it is necessary to provide free SHS. I don't think it should be hook, line, sinker. People must qualify for free SHS. That is what. Let me just point in one thing. You see, we have high numbers, but people walk around, they have enrolled in schools, but they don't go to school simply because it is free. So these abuses are in the system, and we need to work towards streamlining.
My final point to you, I wanted to move on, but since you are the economist on the panel, when you look at our budget for 2023 and you compare that to the fiscal years for 2022 and 2021, now looking at our total revenue and grants, we're looking at something between just around 144 billion Ghana cedis, but the total expenditure 205.4. The question is, we'll have a deficit of some 61.4 billion Ghana cedis, especially as we're going to the IMF and looking at where we find ourselves. The question has been asked, how do we make up for the deficit? I've heard an economist say that, Dr. Sarkodie, I think, say that we've not necessarily been shut out of the Eurobond market. What is the reality you see? Very briefly on that, so we move on to the other guests as well.
Oh, we have been shut out. There's no way you can tell this. We have been shut out of the capital markets. I think that it was even too late. The rating agencies were far behind the debt sustainability curve as far as Ghana is concerned. So when we hit the 77% debt to GDP ratio, I expected that the serious downgrading should have started there. And if we were shut out early enough, I'm sure we would have taken measures to correct our situation. I also have to say that we ought to push for a debt cancellation. There is no way.
But we are there already, aren't we? We're there already.
Yes, we are pushing for debt treatment, and we are not trying to drive home the message that we cannot achieve debt sustainability without debt forgiveness. Because we are looking at a nation that owes almost 47.7 billion or so, 0.44 be thereabout. So 52% of it is about foreign debt. If we don't have debt forgiveness, take for example, 10 years from now, we're going to have a 7.4 or so billion euro bond maturing. Can you imagine Ghana at any point in time paying this? So even if we do debt treatment now, we are just postponing the woes for another day. So we need to push that even the portions of our debts that are held by multinational institutions and institutional lenders must be suspended for a considerably long time or cancelled altogether. It's only in that case that we may be returned to the capital markets. Because if we demonstrate enough commitment that we are not pursuing restructuring as far as loans from the Eurobond markets are concerned and for those of individual bond holders, the confidence will be there. People want to lend back to us. But once we restructure these things, we are going to have problems going back into the capital markets.
Right.
So if I were in government, I would push for debt cancellation from the institutional lenders and then try to restructure the Eurobond debts and also the individual bond holders in a very mutual and engaging manner so that the confidence returns into the economy. I am done criticizing because I think that we all know why we are here. We had a government that believed that borrowing was economic governance. So we have said that over and over and over again. That's why today I've avoided rehashing some of the negative policies and bad government approaches that we have had. We have to be looking at how we come out of this. Because I was telling somebody yesterday that yes, you can have your pound of flesh, but if we don't act, in 2-3 months' time, you may not get your salary. Government may not be able to pay salaries. And those are the realities. We have to go beyond that. If you look at the numbers, it scares you. And if you don't look at the numbers and you think this is an opportunity to tell government that it's mismanaged this economy, the price we have to pay is that we collapse the economy. This debt treatment, whatever we have to do, we have to support it. I was making some suggestion that bondholders, individual bondholders, is going to bring some problems. We are already seeing it. We ought to have given organized labor something so that they agree to include their tier 1, tier 2 pensions.
Right.
I did indicate that why don't we, for example, offer them some extension of their retirement dates so that those retiring 10 years from now, they are the ones that are going to be hit most. Can we, for example, give an extension of 5 years in service so that they don't retire early? Secondly, they don't go onto the pension schemes early. They stay in work and contribute longer. That way, organized labor may be willing to listen to government and say yes. But now we are not giving them anything. And we are going for individual bondholders who are going to litigate. And the longer they litigate, the longer it will take for us to get the board approval. And the longer that takes, the more jittery the markets become. And we're going to get shut out in the long term. And this economy will collapse. So we ought to be more transparent and offer carrots in return for debt treatment.
Yeah. Right. Interestingly, as I move on to my other guests, Bernice, you would have noticed as well that the CD is slumping again. And for me, what I find to be interesting, before I move on to Reverend Opuni Frimpong, the disparities. So when you go even to the points of exchange, the Forex Bureau, or even the banks, you would notice that what if you want to buy, you would have to pay is way more than if you're selling to these outfits. And that is rather curious for me. But let me come to Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opunifrimpong. Briefly on these, in fact, I'll pose the same question to you and to Dr. Asa Asante, and then we'll proceed from there. You spoke about free SHS, and then you spoke about Ghana Beyond Aid. Feeding into that, what do you make of our import substitution rhetoric? Because I don't see, I cannot say policy for now, because there's not much to hold on to. But our rhetoric when it comes to import substitution and the same things we talk about, self-sufficiency in terms of food, rice production, sugar, and all of that. What do you make of that, and how do you feel we can really get to that point where we are leveraging what we have to sustain ourselves and balance our budget? I'll start with you, Reverend Opunifrimpong.
Back a bit. Today is a holiday. A holiday because we are celebrating, call it Constitution Day, something that happened over the weekend. And our democracy, which is the key pillar under this dispensation. Now, when we are close to election, the enthusiasm, it's like Ghana democracy is becoming democracy of election day. When we are done with election, that enthusiasm that will send us to election or voting day, you don't see it. And when we come into governance, thank God for this current parliament, it's gradually our democracy is becoming take it or leave it. As soon as we are done with election and we have a party in power, now what come to be known as winner takes all, we are in power, and therefore take it or leave it. And gradually consensus building, which should be a major pillar in democracy, you don't see it. In fact, even the period we are assessing, you levy, and you look at the tension and struggle in Parliament House. Before we went to communities for, whatever they call it, that stakeholder meetings, when the struggle had already taken place at Parliament House and it was not working well, then we moved to the community. Now you have this where we have reached debt restructuring. Initially, we were told it will not affect pension. Later on, it will affect pension. We were told bondholders, individual bondholders will not be affected, and now they are affected. Now, you don't get platforms for national conversation. Cabinet has decided this. Take it or leave it. And we are getting more of that. But I pray and hope our democracy will go beyond election day. That democracy is not just voting day, but everyday governance that we take. We must be Democrats. And I pray and hope Parliament as we have now, at least the current Parliament is giving us that indication that we can get there. We don't know if it happens one day, we have the vast difference, maybe because of the numbers at the moment. But we hope Parliament will continue their oversight responsibility. For the first time, we get government budget going to Parliament, and Parliament, slashing figures, cutting down, and telling government, you can't have this.
Yeah.
To me,
sorry, I just had to interject there, talking about Parliament saying you can have that, and the issue of consensus building just makes me think about a national cathedral and how people are still really, really upset about how government is going about it. Like you say, you hear one thing today, you hear another the next day. So we say we're going to give a seed money. It's going to be funded by, individuals and private donations. And then we see that consistently government is having to pump money in there. This whole national cathedral thing, can't it wait? People say, look, okay, fine. You can build a national cathedral, but not now when we are going through all this. And Dr. Ayamba painted the picture. The economists tell us, look, it's really gloomy. It's not good. We are struggling as a people. Can't we pull those resources into something else, and then when we stabilize, we build a national cathedral? Or can we go back to the original communication? Can we make it solely a private funded project?
Yes, Bennett, but I'm still interested in the question Ben asked earlier on.
Now, I'm just doing this as a follow-up because you were talking about this government not listening.
So I will now come to, for instance, National Cathedral. I'm a pastor. I will be one of the first people to support cathedral, construction of cathedral anywhere, anytime. But if you ask my personal opinion, the National Cathedral must be built by Christians in this country, not the taxpayers in this country. That has been my position, and I am still convinced that Ghanaians should not be taxed to build a National Cathedral. Churches, if we want a National Cathedral, all the churches in Ghana must come together and build a National Cathedral. Now, right from the beginning, that was the story. And if it is now, if you like, Ghanaians are going to build, then let's have a conversation that Ghanaians, and this is what I'm saying, that we need democracy that go beyond election day. If Ghanaians want a cathedral, then they must make the decision. But if one person is giving vision, a dream to the churches, then let us stay there. Because that is how it started. A president who had a vision or a dream, and he called heads of churches and shared his vision with, and they bought into it. We reached a point, and it's now no more one vision that was given to the churches. Now it's a vision that is going to the consolidated fund. You know, but I will wish the original idea, church leaders come together and do this. I would still want to see that, but this is my personal opinion. I want the National Cathedral to be built. I support it. I will continue to support it, but it should be a responsibility of the churches in Ghana and not ordinary kayayes and kayayos selling on the street, taking money from them to build a National Cathedral. But I don't know if I can move on.
Please go ahead, Rev. Please go ahead.
Yes. Now, when this administration came on, they gave us so many promises. And one of the things that I'm still struggling with is the issue of managing expectations. The things they told us 2016 when they came to power first time and now the second time. I would want somebody to go to the drawing board that we promise you this. We can't. We are sorry. Don't look up to that. We promise you that we are sitting at Tisikaso and Sukomodian. But you bet me at Tisikaso and Sukomodian. We still sit on money, but we can't have the money. We are sorry. I promise you one CD, $1. Sorry. You know, our leaders should be humble enough to say sorry to things that they know they can't do. Because the people are still living with the expectations they gave us. And nobody gave us expectation that I will wake up one morning to buy diesel 1 liter, 23 Ghana cedis. It wasn't part of the promises they gave us. Somebody should be bold enough to apologize to Ghanaians that we didn't want it this way. We have reached there. But back to what Ben asked earlier on, matters of importation and Ghana beyond aid. We need national conversation and still consensus building, still democracy beyond election year. Excellent. One person, one administration cannot get us there, Ghana beyond aid. It's a gradual, it's a process. But I want to hear, you go to meeting at the Jubilee House, and the MC will announce that the rice we will eat here is made in Ghana rice. Tomato is coming from Offenso. This is coming from here. That we are proud of ourselves as a people. Now, gifts and other things that come from seat of government, rice, Thailand. You know, things that we should be proud of that Abetime and other places can produce. From government, we go to, why are we not serving Ghanaian rice in our secondary schools? Why are we still bringing eggs and chicken and even now guinea fowl from Denmark? In the name of, so it's like these are political soundbites. Some of the things that we heard from this administration gradually are becoming political soundbites. Great ideas. Ghana beyond aid. Where is it? And I pray and hope the remaining years of this administration, somebody will seriously embark on that effort, that we meant it. It wasn't a political soundbite. But
Right.
I must say, at the moment, some of the political promises that we heard are becoming a political soundbite. Ben, if I must respond to the question you are asking me, because we don't see what has changed, even how much we import tomato from a place like Burkina Faso.
Right.
We have everything here, and we are bringing tomato, onion, everything from Burkina Faso. You ask yourself, why? But we can do it. Let us do national orientation. I will always go back to President Akufo when the whole ministry was, created national orientation, and his vice president will do a campaign on public discipline. Why are we not going there, knowing that we are losing the discipline, public discipline, attitudinal battle? It's everywhere. It's in governance. It's in our young people, on our roads. It's in government. You see some of our leaders gradually is going down, but even how they want to push all of us from the road because they are coming, and how they announce their presence. The level of indiscipline and corruption. And it's like we can continue like this. We can continue like this as a nation.
Right.
So I will want to see a more attitudinal change, but it must come from leadership, that we can do things differently. We can give ourselves a national orientation, build our national integrity, build our national identity, build our national confidence, even in our children. What makes us unique as Ghanaians? Now, you don't hear it, you don't see it, as if it doesn't matter. Now, when you do that and you still talk about Ghana beyond aid, I consider that to be a political soundbite.
You consider that to be a political soundbite. Let me come quickly to Dr. Kwabi Asah-Asante. What would be your response along those same lines?
Policy on import substitution is being a total failure. Read the budget, and it gives you an idea that we have capacity for producing a number of things here. Take, for instance, issue of rice. Abeime lands are fertile, go to central western region. We can do a lot of stuff here, and yet we are importing simply because people feel that is the way to go. But it will not help anybody. Now you look at how we are struggling with our foreign exchange, issues, the whole lot. And if we are able to develop capacity here, build the things that we need here, grow them, why would we import from Burkina Faso, tomato and all that? A place that is, desert. And here we have arable lands. We can make use of it. Recently, you saw issue of food, school feeding program having difficulties. And I asked myself, when I was a little boy growing up, and then I attended school in Sectec, we had school farms. What has happened to school farms? Come to my house, I have backyard.
And Dr. Asah-Asante, that's a very important point you make. I was sharing that same thought with, look, when I was at Bishop Herman way back, we were farming, and this whole bit about the buffer stock and company and schools running out of food. I mean, we were producing our own maize, yam, and stuff like that. And now, all of that has fizzled out, and we can't even feed our schools.
We were doing that. I went to sector, we were producing maize, cassava, whatnot. All right. Can you imagine we get yam from southern Ghana and supply to northern schools where the land is fertile for growing of yam and all that? If we sit down and then plan properly and turn all the secondary schools, have a backyard, school farm where you grow some of these things, they will be able to even increase IGF for various schools. All right. Come and see my home, my backyard. I have about 4,000 pieces of fish in here. Why can't the government that has capacity look at the government lands and all that? They are lying fallow. My friend economists will tell you, if you have resources and you don't use them and they lie fallow, the cost associated with it. But we are not bothered simply because the mother Ghana always has resources and that we will use and misuse. And when there is a difficulty, we run to the IMF, World Bank and all that. Let us remember that nobody has built any solid society with the support of the Bretton Woods institution. Far from it. Once we get that orientation, which the Reverend has articulated clearly, we get that orientation right, we will build capacity here and develop something that we call our own. Two, the issue of the economic challenges that you find yourself. Our friend from the economics department will tell you that they have something they call the political business cycle. That any time that we go for election, we are ready to throw out money, destroy all economic theories and all that, and then we get power and only come to struggle to build the society. When we get power also, then you see government effort to what? Bring inflation down, do this, do that. But the same government that goes to election want to destroy the economy and then have power. That is a cycle that if we are not ready to break it, I am afraid we'll continue to what? Talk about this issue till thy kingdom come. So there is an aspect, which is what? Discipline. We are going to the IMF World Bank for resource and all that. IMF, they bring only two things: discipline, and then they ensure that you stick to the discipline, all right? Then they bring you what? Resources. So why can't we be disciplined? If we are disciplined, the money that slipped through our hands, through corruption, through waste and all that, we'll be able to what? Put them together and do something meaningful for ourselves. That we lose $3 billion to corruption. And yet, look at IMF saying that they are giving us $3 billion. Corruption alone, when we manage it well, we'll be able to cater for that. Issue of waste, so much that you read from the Auditor General's report, a lot. There are a lot of what? Industries here we have abandoned. I was a reporter in Parliament, and I saw Parliament, doing a lot of legislation so that they will encourage production of what? Cashew, which they found land in Brunei halfway and all that, fertile for that. What has happened to this? All right. We have a lot of lands that can be used for various programs and policies that will support. Look at the large army of unemployed youth. If we are able to what? Make agriculture our main program, I tell you, it can employ a lot. There are people in fishing, there are people in crop production, there are people in animal husbandry and all that. I tell you, we will not struggle. But it seems as if that we are bereft of ideas. Yet we are surrounded by people with knowledge. And look at economic departments in Ghana. Look at economic scholars, financial scholars. Where are they? Have you made use of them? That we are struggling. Ali Mazuri, may he rest in peace, told us that we are rich and yet poor. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have a lot of human resource. There are some Ghanaians who are even out there helping other countries to get out of the economic doldrums, but yet we don't want to make use of them.
In fact, we are told that the Nigerians, the rice revolution, if you want to call it that, the person behind it, Bernice, is Ghanaian. and we're struggling with
there are a lot of them.
Rice production in Ghana.
There are a lot of them. I can talk about, what has happened to Bache Jaku and Co. People who turn a lot of things around in New York. What had happened to people like Dr. Kunedu Apreku, in the 80s and 90s. They were the shining example of economic ideas and all that. Mr. Kwampianima and all that. My goodness. And then my main problem also is that what has happened to the Ghana's economic development plan that we have? We have spent resources to develop and build. Are we making the better use of it? Or is it a document lying on the shelves? There are a lot of ideas in there that would deal with our problems.
Doc, let's look forward. Let's look forward to the year. And I remember when we were reviewing 2022, looking forward to 2023, I asked you a question about how you expected the political climate to turn out, because we know it's a very critical year. The two major parties are likely to choose their flag bearers or give us indications on who's going to lead the party into the 2024 elections. We've already seen that started playing out in the governing party. But government also has a big hurdle to cross, which is to secure an IMF deal. It's very critical. Dr. Ayamba has already told us what it will look like if we're not able to do so in the nearest possible time. Government is hoping to do so in the first quarter of this year. Banks are trying to get individual bondholders to sign on to the program. It doesn't really appear like a firmed up thing for government. So looking forward to this year, on the political and economic front, what are your expectations? How do you think government can change the story?
One, from the economic perspective, what I expect government to do is that to be moderate. about its expenditure. Expenditure has been a big problem for us. We have not been able to handle it well. We need to do that now. We don't need to wait for IMF, because once we are able to handle expenditure very well, we'll reduce some of the problems that we have. Two, issue of waste. We need to be conscious about it and manage it well. Look at number of vehicles that we have, cross-country vehicle, fuel allocation and its use and abuse and all that. We need to be worried about this and deal with it head on. Issue of what? Import. We need to get to our budget, look at where we have capacity. Let's build into that. And then we produce the ones that we can comfortably do them here. The ones that we need to import, why not? But we should be mindful that we move towards what? Reducing imports and then producing the best from our resources here. Come to look at the issue of what? The labor front. There have been chaos. And I don't, it appears to me that there's no solution in sight. And you can never talk about productivity when the labor front is what? Chaotic. And I want government to be able to listen to stakeholders, let them participate in decisions so that they can own and then drive these policies to fruition. I expect that. Come to look at the issue of politics. Let us remember that all that we are doing, if we don't get the political climate right, we cannot achieve anything meaningful. Take it or leave it, this democracy has come to stay. We have challenges, but I believe and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to work things around and strengthen its frontiers. What can we do? We are going for election. Let us make sure that we don't spend more than we have. Let us remember that after election, you come back to government. And if you destroy the economy, if you spend all your resources, you cannot govern after you have won power. We need to get that one right. So that means that we should break that cycle of political business cycle, where we always want to come out with statements that will entice people to vote for us. And then when we get power, we destroy the very economy we have spent time and resources to build during the election. We should break that. And then two, another political thing is that you need an atmosphere of peace, all right? Politics, or election for that matter, always come with a huge noise and problems and all that. Let us remember that we cannot destroy this country and pretend that we want to come back and build. What kind of exercise is that? So any activity, any decision that will undermine the security of this country, all of us must stand up and kick against it. That is the way to go. And then when we are going for election, we must be prepared that we will observe the three phases, the pre-election phase. What are the things that we need to do right? Let us go through the processes. If you talk about registration and all that, we do it orderly and all that. If we have difficulties, I always want us to use the institutions. They are built to deal with our problems. Once the institutions are down, I'm afraid we won't achieve what we want to achieve. On the day of election, all right, it is not going for election, it's not do or die affair. You are going to express yourself and make a choice for the leadership of the country. There's no need to fight and all that. There shouldn't be any preparation whatsoever to, as it were, to affect the security of the country because you want power. No. Any of such, efforts that is brought to the fore, we as citizens must rise up to the occasion and challenge it and throw it away. So that we can have a peaceful. And then the last aspect is that after elections, let us remember that we need Ghana intact. So if there are difficulties, we are not going to urge people to jump onto the streets, to burn ties, to destroy the society and all that. The only way to address your concerns after election is to go to court. And for me, the court is the forum for disagreements and for conflict.
To wrap the conversation, gentlemen, I'll give you a minute each to react to this. I've been thinking about it. I don't know what your thinking is. But since we've spoken governance and other matters, I'd like to find out from you, to what extent has our brand of democracy, and please note, our brand of democracy, not democracy generally, our brand of democracy served Ghana's developmental purposes? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do you assess it? We've had this fourth Republican experiment. How well has it served us in respect of our brand of democracy? I'll start with you, Dr. Ayamga. A minute each. Doc, you would have to unmute.
Okay, thank you. I'll rate it average. I'll put it at 5, 1 to 10. You see, what we have done well is elect government, but our government has been based on patronage, blackmail. We have not been able to deploy our best resources. People who campaign for government have found a way of twisting the arm of government to be given positions that they can manage. So that is what has brought us here. It has more or less made government to bend towards populism. And any policy we are going to implement, you are looking at numbers rather than efficiency and quality. So you can have party foot soldiers go lock down government institutions, prevent government machinery from functioning, interfere with the procurement processes, more or less bring the country to a halt because of our brand of we have a system where the people goes scot-free. Once you get political office, you have political connections.
So we appear to be losing. If you can hear me, Dr. Ayamga.
I think that if we block the back doors that allow people to agree with not paying their fair share of tax, not going through due diligence and due processes, and we have no way of catching them. And we will be a different country. But largely, I think that our politics has been that of unity or serve my interest rather than that of the nation. And we have no way of checking it. So our democracy has brought peace. We select government. It's a democracy of elections and not of governance. When it gets to governance, we have not been able to deliver for the people. It's a big word, if asked.
Okay. Dr. Ayamga, thank you very much. Let me now move on to Reverend Opuni-Frimpong. Your final take on that matter, democracy? Hello, Rev. Well, I don't know whether we don't have a situation with...
Do you hear me? I hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Yes. Let me put it this way. Every political party has made contribution to Ghana's development. Every political party. They've all made significant contribution, but they go public, and the way they malign, the way they attack themselves, this signal to Ghanaians that these our leaders are wasting our time. Because even intra, now they are going to do both inter and intra. Now, this year that they are doing within, now they started, even yesterday I heard some. You are a liar, you've done nothing. So the way they attack and they insult and the impression they give to Ghanaians, they are undermining our democracy. That they take away the public confidence and public trust. We are a developing nation. We will get to the mountain top, but it may take time. We need hope. But the leaders must not express that feeling that the other person is as useless as anything. Now, when you sell that message, the next day, that is how Ghanaians will see you. And so we are struggling. The democracy is like, do we have the right people? Meanwhile, if you become objective enough, they've all made contribution, but they destroy the very things that they have contributed and give us the impression that democracy is not working well for us. Moving into the future, especially next year election, starting from this year's primaries, I will want the political leaders to give respect, public respect to one another, that they must appreciate. If you are MPP, be humble enough to appreciate NDC contribution. If you are NDC, be humble enough to appreciate that MPP has made contribution. And then let us move from that angle. And democracy in Ghana, myself, all of us. Now you get young university graduates jump into politics, and within 6 months, 1 year, they are changing cars, they are building mansions. And if democracy pays more than teachers in classroom, university educators, and those who go to health institutions, we are giving a signal that democracy in Ghana works for some people who have access to state resources. democracy in Ghana must work for all of us.
Right. Thank you so much, Doc. So you have the final take, Dr. Asa Asante.
I would say that we have no brand, there's no Ghanaian brand of democracy. It's a representative democracy that is universal, which we are practicing, all right, except that on a different terrain. But that aside, if you look at the cost of doing nothing, the cost of not being democratic is too expensive for us to bear. So for me, in spite of our challenges, in spite of our difficulties, our democracy has served us well in terms of human rights abuses and human rights promotion, even though we have gory tales of human rights violations in our books and whatnot. But we have some semblance of something that gives us hope. If you look at the issue of rule of law, it is, yes, always not the best, but at least we have gone beyond the point that we need to be worried about the fact that rule of law is not working. It is, and the institutions of rule of law are up and doing the work. Issue of election, which is a cardinal point of democracy, we are saying that we have gone through so many elections with improvement from one to the other, that now we are even moving towards consolidating or firming the frontiers of our democracy. That's kudos to Ghanaians who've done that, because we have seen reversals in West Africa, issue of coups and all that. We have been able to work against this tide, and we are breathing a sigh of relief. Issue of institutions which drive democracy. We have institutions that are weak in our society, but I tell you that we have managed to deal with this institution and help this institution to work for us, except that I admit that we need to put in more energy and resources to strengthen them from time to time. We have seen issue of political participation at the highest level, that people now take interest in the political affairs of their country. They are not sitting down for people to tell them things and then dictate to them. They are part and parcel of the political process. And where they feel they need their voices to be heard, they make them clear. This is a manifestation of the fact that our democracy is working. I admit that there are challenges. Challenges such as hypocrisy on the part of the Ghanaian society, not everybody, but you realize that something that we need to tell the political actors in the face. We shy away based on party tradition, based on interests, personal interests, and all that. We have sometimes also been timid with regard to the way we handle people who hold political office. We let them think that they are the laws of the land. I tell you, any political office holder is just a bed of passage. With time, you fizzle out, and then we as a society must stand up and then build a very solid society that we are able to call a spade a spade. Issue of transparency has also sometimes eluded the political actors, that they are doing public business as if they are doing their personal business, and that they don't want to let us have access to what they do. So they operate in darkness, and that we don't know what is public life or what is not. We have seen issue of accountability and difficulty. Sometimes holders of political power, we want them to account for the stewardship of their office, and you will see them they are found wanting. When you demand that, they call you names and all that. We have seen expression of that in our constitution, the preamble, that government and the people will be answerable to the people. So all in all, when I put them together, I believe that in spite of the difficulties and all that, democracy, I'll give it 70%, but there's more room for improvement.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Kwame Asante is a political scientist at the University of Ghana. Also, this morning we've been speaking to Dr. Michael Ayamgai, development economist and director of the West Africa Center for Sustainable Rural Transformation at the University for Development Studies, and Reverend Dr. Kwabena Opunni-Frimpong, executive director, Alliance for Christian Advocacy Ghana, also a former general secretary of the Christian Council of Ghana. Benjamin, quite an interesting conversation. And I just smiled when Dr. Asa Asante said, we don't have our brand of democracy, but that's a conversation for another day. Because I mean, you would want to look into the fine details of our kind of democracy, but we get it, Doc. Maybe we would couch a conversation for another day. But thank you so much for joining us. But this